Hello, people. Thanks for joining me again. This is a Carvin 2004 California carve top. I think it's called a CT6 or something like that. Carve top 6-string. Maybe that's what they meant by that. I have a long history with this guitar. I'm the original owner, and I wanted to point out a couple things about it that I really love. And you hear me talk about finishes a lot on this channel, nitro versus shellac versus polyester. Very durable stuff. And I heavily gigged this guitar for about 10 years and it still looks brand new. Hardly has a scratch on it. Let's look at some other stuff here. It's not all original. I changed some stuff. I'll tell you all about it. I used to live in Anaheim, California, and play in this band called Pleasure Capsule, and we mostly did original stuff to start with, but we ended up adding some classic rock oldies and doing some Irish pubs and stuff like that. But our bass player, his name is Kirk Hayhurst, and he kept telling me I was playing a Strat. He kept saying, "Man, you got to get yourself something beefier," because we were a three-piece band. You got to get that Les Paul sound. You need the Les Paul. So he talked me into it. We went down to the used guitar store and I bought a 1975 Les Paul Custom. The Les Paul Custom was a Black Beauty fretless wonder, and I could barely play the darn thing. Sounded great, but I had to get a refret. So he said, "I know, guy." Dropped it off over there, and I think it was $250 later. We had nice fat jumbo tall frets, and I could play it. And after about 6 months to a year of playing that thing, I developed a herniated disc in my neck from the 13-pound, basically over one shoulder, my left shoulder. And I decided I had to get rid of that thing because it was going to cause me way too much physical problems. I don't know how Randy Rhoads did it. He was only in his mid-20s when he left us, but he played a Les Paul Custom, and he was a little bit younger. I think I was about 30 by the time I decided I could not play a Les Paul. So I went down to the Santa Ana store. Carvin had a factory outlet, and this thing was hanging on the wall. It wasn't in this condition. It didn't have these pickups. I put those on. It did not have those knobs, but it had the humbuckers that are open coil, cream colored, with 12 poles on each coil, and it had push-pull pots that were kind of shrill sounding. I couldn't quite get the sound I wanted out of this guitar. And I went through a lot of different trial and errors to try to change out the capacitors on the push-pull. I changed out the push-pull. There's about 50 million wires. They were 4-wire pickups. Eventually, I got me some Gibson. I think these are 498T and 499R or something like that. And I had to get some new pickup rings and fill the holes and put those in. I went, keep it simple, stupid, no push pulls, just 2 basic pots, a 3-way, and I had to change out the pots to the knurled shaft so I can get these amber colored speed knobs. And they're very low friction. I'll play this guitar so you can hear it. Joe Walsh ordered one of these back in the day when they first came out, and he has a video on YouTube talking about what he loves about it. And he played it in the Eagles, or he probably still does, I'm not sure, but he was talking about how low the bridge is and how it's like an old Les Paul. And the reason I wanted to kind of compare this to Les Paul, which seems weird because I know it looks exactly like a Paul Reed Smith, and the Paul Reed Smiths that were coming out at the time looked just like this, and they really copied Paul Reed Smith by making this. It's slightly different, but I like these contours that are cut into the body, because when I play a Les Paul, it leaves a big crease in my arm, and this is more comfortable. It's lighter than your typical Les. It's probably about the same weight as the lightest 59 reissue that you can find, 59 burst. It's about 8 pounds. And the reason I want to compare it to this Les Paul 59 burst is because I had a customer bring me a few, and after the second one, it was a dirty lemon burst. I decided I need to get me one of those. And But to be able to afford it, I thought, man, I'll have to sell off a couple of my other guitars. I got this one out, and after, and one of the other reasons I wanted to get the Les Paul 59 Burst reissue is because when I played it, just magical things were coming off the ends of my fingertips. You know, it was like this wasn't happening when I was playing my other guitars, and then all of a sudden I pick up this Les Paul, and it was inspiring me to write, you know, riffs and play faster than I could play on other guitars. And I pulled this one out thinking I was going to sell it, and I started playing it, and it gave me that same inspiration that the 59 Burst gave me. So I decided I'm going to keep this guitar. It's a little bit different than a Les Paul in a few ways. You know, it has the strings through the body. It only has 2 knobs, but I only require 2 knobs really for what I do. I'm more of a heavy metal guy like Eddie Van Halen. Eddie didn't even need 2 pickups. He only had 1 pickup and a volume knob. He didn't even need a tone knob or a switch. So, you know, I had an Eddie Van Halen guitar too. They have a raw maple fretboard, and they've got a flatter radius, which I just, you know, doesn't work for me. But this 12-inch radius ebony board does, and these beautiful abalone block inlays work just fine for me. Gives me everything that a Les Paul Custom would give. It doesn't have binding, which is not that big of a deal. It's got a nice rounded feel here on the edge, just like the 59 Les Paul. And it has some pretty beefy fret wire, 100 thousandths of an inch wide. And I'm going to play it for you and let you kind of hear what it sounds like. It doesn't sound like the Carvin anymore. It sounds just like a Gibson Les Paul, really. It's got the maple cap like a Les Paul does, mahogany body. It doesn't have plastic binding. This is just an unstained maple edge. They tape it off. They spray on the sunburst, and then they peel the tape off, scrape the edge a little bit, and then they put on a polyester finish. It does have a 12-inch radius, just like a Les Paul, and it's got the polyester finish, unlike a Les Paul. Les Paul's going to have a nitrocellulose finish, which will wear and relic with age. This one will always stay brand new looking because it's basically plastic finish, and it's not a bad thing. You know, most of your Fender guitar bodies are made with a polyester finish. So, will the headstock break like a Gibson? Probably not as likely on this guitar. It does not have as drastic of an angle, and it has a volute. Some of the 70s Les Pauls and a lot of their models that are called 70s neck profile still have this volute, but it adds a little bit of strength to the joint where it takes that tilt, and this has a very shallow tilt, so preventing the neck breaks. But they will break still, you know, if you drop it hard enough, I'm sure it would break, but a little less likely. It really stays in tune a little bit better than typical Gibson does, and the reason for that is that the strings, the tuners, are staggered in a way where it keeps the strings in a straight line to the post. On your Gibsons, these tuning posts are way over here, and the string has to take and a lot of times it gets bound at the nut, especially the G string for some reason. And but I just wanted to point that out before I play it. Spurzle locking tuners and ebony fretboard, Graph Tech nut. Let's hear this thing. Well, one of the other problems I had with the original electronics in the Carvin was the tone. It didn't have a nice gradual taper where you know it was kind of like it did nothing until you got down to like 1 or 2, and then it kind of just cut off. So you couldn't get like an in between. Like right now, it's, I think I got an orange cap capacitor in there, and it's a, you know, it's just a regular old CTS pot, so it works great. I like it a lot. It's got a real, you can do swells on it.